I'm Paul Kelly, and I've written a poem concerning Scranton. It's called The Anthracite Poem. I'd like to read it. It has an epigraph from Dante's Dona Petra sequence. That these my words be as hard as stone. It has a prologue. If need be, out in the street with a jackhammer to open this city up. Free and clear to Dr. William Hooker Smith. Among the first men to see the Lackawanna Valley for what might by force be extracted from it was this man, Dr. William Hooker Smith, a man of good education and superior abilities, writes the Reverend Kraft, son of a Presbyterian minister, an immigrant into the Wyoming Valley in 1772, connected with the Sullivan Expedition, 1779, a prominent man of property and influence. One of the first justices of the peace in Luzerne County, commission dated 11 May 1787 and signed by one B. Franklin. Smith's reasoning was for ore, extraction and reduction of ore to iron. To reach this end, he purchased outright or leased land in Luzerne County. Iron-bound, he is thus a speculator of the new Iron Age. Purchased of John Scott of Pittston a right to any iron ore or other metal he might discover on the hilly lands of the said John Scott, by the Red Spring erected a forge for the purpose of converting. 1789. Old forge thereafter to rend stone. In 3 years' time, Smith's interests broaden. The iron man his own Ferris wheel spins. Quote, this indenture witnesseth that I, Joseph Washburn, of Providence, in consideration of 20 shillings, do give, grant, bargain, and sell unto Dr. William Hooker Smith, his heirs, and assigns forever the privilege to enter on my farm of land lying in the town of Providence, and dig, delve, and raise any ore, mineral, or stone coal, or iron ore on my land, free and clear to Dr. William Hooker Smith, his heirs, and assigns forever. April 16, 1792, Jonathan Davis, Jesse Gardner, witnessed. Unquote. Smith begins it. When the gunsmith at Christian Spring, near Nazareth in 1750, told the two Indians that he could not repair their rifles because he had no charcoal for his forge, they asked of him a large sack, which he gave them, and they went away. 2 days later, they were back again with as much coal as they could carry in the same sack he had given them. And when he prevailed upon them to tell him where they had got this coal, these two Indians did not say. The stones will burn in Nazareth, Christian Mickish. Rush hour. (1800). The thickly timbered hills were denuded to supply charcoal for the Slocum Forge. Those early manufacturers had not discovered the vast beds of anthracite all about them. The first anthracite coal shipped to Philadelphia via the Lehigh put the fire in the boiler there out. Those Philadelphia gents, they broke it up fine and used that black stone to gravel the streets. 1808. February 11th of Masonry 5808 made the experiment of burning the common stone coal of the valley in a grate in a common fireplace in my house, and found it will answer the purpose of fuel, making a clearer and better fire at less expense than burning wood in the common way. Jesse Fell. John Smith, Abijah Smith, apply powder blast to coal mining in Pennsylvania by one John Flanagan of Milford, Connecticut, hired 1818 for this purpose. Previous to the introduction of this blast, a miner with a pick and wedge could take out about 1.5 tons of coal per day, for which he received 75 cents. 1820. In which year the total yield of anthracite coal in the U.S. was only 365 tons, 1 ton for each day of the year, says Woolridge. 1830, 43,000. 1840, 148,000. 1850, 432,339 tons anthracite sent to market from the Lackawanna region. 1867. In this year, railroads, Delaware, Lackawanna and Western, Delaware and Hudson, Jersey Central and Erie begin to acquire anthracite-producing lands. 1871. Samuel Sloan, Thomas Dixon, John Ewing, F.B. Gowan, or is it Govern? George Scranton, W.W. Scranton, 1900 speculators and bosses do make a killing. They don't see the land at all except as real estate, ownership, property, profits, place, money and smoke in these men who control in their eyes. Laboring under the earth. Postscript to 1871 above. Concerning W.R. Storrs, General Coal Agent, Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. No matter at what price coal was selling, if he could get men to work for $1 a day, he should not pay $1.50. Thus, the strike. The question, he said. Mr. James O'Halloran spoke. The question, he said, with employers is how cheap can the men live? This is a map. Lackawanna and Wyoming avenues. A haberdashery, a department store, and now a new centrally located shopping mall. 1/2 mile from Ware Abbott's mill and the Slocum's forge, where the Chamberlain plant manufactures armaments. Cedar Avenue, Roaring Brook. Caboose Meadows 1. When Providence Road was a trail through when Weston Field and that part of Providence was Caboose Meadows by the banks of the Lackawanna, pure, clear water. abounding in fish. The Great Carbuncle. Anthracites, anthrax, anthracite, anthrocyte, blood, stone. A distinction brought forward and carried as of the hand and the eye. To make with or to do with the materials of the place, not just to see through the place as Smith, Slocum's, Wirtz's, as Scranton's did, saw right through it to something somewhere else. Not that it might have been anywhere, say Nottingham, where Gertie Bailey was always so quick to say she was from, having also been so extracted, not merely to live off nature, nor fatted off another man's labor, but what was made with, as perhaps O'Halloran and others did make for as long as they were able. These men, of whom no one speaks, whose names do not appear in the city's chronicles, are the makers, as distinct from the takers as they are so. Who also came to the Lackawanna Valley from elsewhere, and who settled and raised families here, and who went down into mines owned by men who never went in them, and who took the risks there under the earth for these men in offices in Philadelphia and New York and Scranton, who worked for these men, these princes of industry, who regulated land and coal and steel and money, and who also, and with the same purposes and no less strictly, regulated the lives of other men, and thereby made men means, and means only to the end of higher profits. Men to be abused thus, so that a nation would progress and prosper, a nation of the few, of the princes who, from their own greed and avarice and power, turn the lives of the many and turn the world itself to so much mechanical shit for generations to come. The concerns here are with what these unknown men have done in the face of the undone, working for men who would be their undoing, who would, when the times were rough and the profits low, pull out and pull their money out, as the Scrantons off to Buffalo in 1912. What they saw, what here these men, all of them, did. Is it now Larry Schwab and Peter Kilcullen who stand up and show their backsides to the city fathers? Caboose Meadows, too. Westonfield, where I played and fought and fucked as a boy man. The breaker. Lump, stove, chestnut, pea, buckwheat, bird's eye, pinhead. The site of the county courthouse, where it now stands, was a peat bog known as Tamarack Swamp and later called Frog Pond. This land was owned by the Lackawanna Iron and Coal Company, which turned it over to the lately formed county in 1879 for a deed of fee simple. The construction bid for the proposed building was tendered by one John Snaith of Ithaca, New York, for $148,879. When the excavations for the foundation were made, a black, jelly-like, homogeneous substance was discovered beneath the surface of the ground there. This black stuff solidified and hardened into stone. They filled in the swamp and built the courthouse of sandstone where it now stands over the coal forming there. Smith, Slocum, Scrantons, Wirtzes looked right through the land, saw it as cipher, thus transparent to something else. Invisible, it disappeared, burned up, all of it, in the minds of men. Avondale, September 6th, 1869, 202 men. Woolridge's report on Avondale. The first general miners' strike in the Lackawanna region took place in 1869, beginning May 25th and continuing until August 27th. The strike commenced with the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad Company, together with those collieries whose coal was purchased by this corporation, except for the Roaring Brook Colliery. The miners demanded an advance of 10 cents per car in the price of mining, which the company refused. During the summer months, while the miners were waiting for an adjustment, many of them went down to the lower Luzerne, where there was no strike, and found work in the mines. While some of them were still engaged in mining there, a fire broke out at the Avondale mine, a few miles below Plymouth, on Monday, September 6th. Over 200 men were in the mine, 240 feet below the surface of the earth, with the breaker on fire and with no means of escape. The fire had caught at the bottom of the shaft and had run up the breaker so that the entire structure was in flames. The colliery was at this time operated by the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad Company. Hearing of the news in Scranton, the Naog steamer and firemen, among them 24 members of the Franklin Engine Company, hurried off to the scene. At 6 that evening it became possible to let down a dog in a basket to test the condition of the air at the lower end of the shaft. The dog was drawn up alive, and it thus became evident that life was possible in the mine. Charles Virtue was then let down with a light, but meeting with obstructions near the bottom of the shaft, he gave the signal to be drawn up. Charles Jones and Stephen Evans were then let down with axes, and upon reaching the bottom, found 3 dead mules and a door fastened. When they forced the door open, sulfur poured out in such volumes that they had to be hastily drawn up in order to escape suffocation. A fan was then erected with which to force down pure air and draw up foul. This fan was set in operation at 9 o'clock Tuesday night, the 7th, the men having been in the mine for more than 24 hours. The fire had worked inside to such an extent that it was not until 5:15 of the next morning, Wednesday, that the place was cleared of foul air and smoke. 2 barriers were broken down, and then the explorers, at 7:30 of that morning, found 1 man dead in a gangway in front of a stone wall with a hole just large enough for him to draw his body through. Inside of this wall were found the miners, 201 in number, huddled together and piled upon each other, all dead. At 8:40 the first dead body was brought to the surface, and the scene at the mouth of the mine shaft was terrible to witness. Thousands upon thousands having flocked to the place to learn of the fate of those below, to witness the agony of the relatives and friends of the dead men was in itself extremely agonizing. The sight of the city shaken, the flower of the town, Providence, crushed. The town gutted, Slocum's Hollow, the earth herself gutted, mind gutted, Lackawanna Iron Works. The site of the town, Scrantonia, trod down, cinder, block, ash, heap, culm, dump, wheel, rust. The site of the town, Scranton. Coal town, go up in smoke. Ashes, ashes for Providence. That men these days could build a house or a city, say, if they had a mind to. For any and all to see at Mulberry Street and across North Washington Avenue from City Hall, inscribed big in black and white letters now faded high up on the gray brick chamber of Commerce Building, read, Scranton, the All-America City. Runes. All one's life, one asks oneself. Thank you.